I still remember the morning when everything inside me changed.
It was not a loud day.
There was no big argument.
No shouting. No door slamming.
It was just quiet. The kind of quiet that hurts more than noise. That morning, I stood in my own kitchen, making breakfast like I had done for so many years. The sun was coming through the window, soft and gentle, touching the floor like a warm blanket. The kettle was boiling. The smell of tea filled the air. Everything looked normal. But inside my heart, something did not feel normal anymore. I watched my husband sitting at the table, looking at his phone, busy with messages, busy with work, busy with everything except me. He sat there like a man who had no idea who I really was. Not the woman who gave him laughter. Not the woman who stood beside him when life was heavy. Not even the woman who once meant the world to him. He just saw someone who cooked for him. Someone who cleaned for him. Someone who was there, but invisible. That morning, before I placed his tea in front of him, I stopped for a moment. I looked at my own hands. Hands that once wore bangles with pride. Hands that once held dreams. Hands that once believed that love meant appreciation, respect, gratitude. And in that simple, quiet kitchen, I realized something painful. My husband had forgotten everything I gave up for him. He forgot the dreams I let go of so he could chase his. He forgot the nights I cried silently so he would never feel weak. He forgot how I changed myself again and again just to make the marriage work. He forgot the girl I once was, the girl who believed in us. And maybe worst of all, I realized I had forgotten myself too. I did not say anything that morning. I did not complain. I did not fight, that I just watched him. And for the first time, I felt like a stranger inside my own life. That is where my story begins, not with anger, not with blame, but with a quiet sadness, a gentle ache inside the heart, and the slow realization that sometimes the deepest heartbreak comes not from strangers, but from the person who promised to love you forever. I was not always like this. There was a time when I smiled easily, when my heart was full of hope, when love felt light, not heavy. I grew up in a simple home. There was love there, real love. My parents did not have much money, but they gave me warmth, respect, and kindness. My mother always said, "Love is not loud. Love is caring." If someone cares for you, they will never forget what you do for them. I believed her. I carried those words like a treasure in my heart. When I met my husband for the first time, I thought I had found that kind of love. He was kind in the beginning, soft-spoken. He smiled a lot. He talked about the future, like it was a beautiful painting we would create together. "I want a partner," he once said. "Not just a wife. Someone who stands beside me." Those words touched me deeply. I thought I had met a man who understood love the way I did. I did not know then that life changes people. Or maybe people sometimes change even before life happens, and we just cannot see it. When we got married, I walked into his home with dreams in my eyes. I told myself, this is my new world now. This is where I will build my happiness. I wanted everything to work.
So I tried.
I tried harder than I should have. I tried so hard that slowly, I stopped seeing myself. In the early days, little sacrifices felt easy. Stop working for a while. That is okay. I will help him build his life first. Move away from my parents. That is fine. Marriage means new responsibilities. Change my habits, my choices, my comfort. Love will make it worth it. I kept believing that. I kept believing that love remembers. Love sees. Love values. But love sometimes forgets when the person holding it forgets to care. Slowly, life moved forward. Days became months. Months became years. We fell into routine. He became busier with work. His dreams became bigger. His ambitions kept growing. And me? I stayed behind those dreams, supporting them quietly. There were days I wanted to talk about my own dreams. Days I wanted to say, I matter too. But each time I opened my mouth, his world felt louder than my voice. So I swallowed my words. I smiled. And I told myself, one day he will look back and say, thank you. But that day never came. Instead, The distance between us started to grow. Not the distance you measure in steps, but in silence, in emotional space, in feeling unseen. And slowly, without even realizing, he forgot. He forgot the girl who stood beside him when he had nothing. He forgot the woman who bent herself into shapes just to keep peace. He forgot that love survives only when both hearts care. So on that quiet morning when I stood holding that cup of tea and looked at the man I once believed would never let me feel alone, I finally saw the truth. He didn't see me anymore. He only saw what I did for him, not who I was. And that realization, that soft, painful moment, became the beginning of everything that followed. It was not just a story about a husband forgetting his wife. It was a story about a woman slowly remembering herself. And this is how it unfolded. Life did not break in one day. It never does. He did not suddenly wake up and forget me. It happened slowly, quietly, almost gently, like sand slipping through fingers. At first, I tried to tell myself it was normal. Every marriage changes. People get busy. Maybe I was expecting too much. But somewhere deep inside, I knew something was not the same anymore. There was a time when he would ask, "How was your day? How are you feeling? Do you need anything?" Now, his words slowly changed. "Did you pay the bills? Did you finish the laundry? What is for dinner?" Not once, "How are you?" I did not say anything. I had convinced myself it was okay. I kept telling my heart, maybe this is what marriage looks like after years. But the heart knows when something is missing, even when the mouth stays quiet. There were evenings when he would come home tired. I would wait for him. I would keep his food warm. I would make tea. I would sit near him hoping he would talk, hoping he would share his day, hoping he would notice my eyes waiting for him. But his conversations always belonged to someone else.
His job.
His friends. His goals, his success. I watched him grow in life. And I was happy for him. Truly happy. Because I had stood beside him when things were hard. So his success felt like ours. But slowly it stopped feeling like ours. And started feeling like his. Sometimes at family gatherings, I would hear people say, "He is successful because he works so hard. He built everything on his own. He did so much for his family." He would smile proudly. He would enjoy the praise. He never corrected them. He never said, "She stood with me. She sacrificed for me. She is part of this success." I would stand in the background, smiling, quiet, invisible. There was one evening I remember very clearly. It still feels fresh in my mind. We were sitting at the dining table. I had spent the whole day cooking a special meal because his relatives were coming. I wanted everything to be perfect. Everyone laughed. Everyone ate. Everyone enjoyed. When dinner ended, one of his relatives said jokingly, "You are very lucky. Your wife does everything. You do not even have to worry about home." My husband laughed and said, "Yes, she is just a housewife. This is all she has to do anyway." Just a housewife.
Just.
That one small word, cut deeper than any knife. Everyone laughed. No one noticed my silence. I looked at my plate. I looked at my hands. Hands that once worked hard at a real job. Hands that once held dreams of independence. Hands that once planned a future of my own.
But I
gave all that up. I chose home. I chose him. I chose this life. And hearing him say, "Just a housewife," it felt like everything I gave up suddenly meant nothing. That night, after everyone slept, I sat on the edge of the bed. The room was dark. The ceiling looked empty. I looked at him sleeping peacefully beside me. I whispered softly, almost without sound, "I mattered once, didn't I?" Of course, he did not hear me. The room stayed silent. Just like my heart, the small hurts continued. They were never loud, never dramatic, never violent, just quiet disrespect. Quiet ignorance. Quiet forgetting. Sometimes I waited for him just to eat dinner together. I believed eating together meant belonging. It meant family. But many nights he would call late and say, "Do not wait. I am eating outside."
Or,
"I am busy. Sleep if you feel sleepy." I tried not to feel bad. But loneliness has a way of whispering inside you. There were anniversaries he forgot. There were important days he ignored. Sometimes I would spend hours preparing something special, and he would say, "I am tired. Can we talk later?" Later never came. My sacrifices became background music in his life. Always there. Never heard. There were moments when people would ask me, "Why do you not work again? Why do you not restart your life? Why do you stay at home all the time?" I would smile and say, "My husband needs me. My home needs me." But deep inside, I knew the truth. I stayed because I had already given so much. I did not know how to take myself back. I had become the person everyone depended on, but no one really saw. And slowly, that quiet sadness became part of me. I woke up with it. I cooked with it. I lived with it. And I went to sleep with it. But even then, even with all the hurt, I still loved him. I still hoped one day he would look at me, really look at me, and say, "I remember. I see you. I am thankful." But life had other plans, because the real breaking point was still waiting ahead, and I had no idea how deeply it was going to change me. The breaking point in life never arrives with thunder. Sometimes it comes in the most ordinary moment. A simple day, a simple conversation, a simple silence that carries too much truth. That day began like any other. I woke up early as always. I cooked breakfast. I cleaned. I prepared things for the day. Everything felt routine, familiar, predictable. But somewhere, my heart already knew something was about to change. It felt a little heavier, a little slower, like it was preparing itself for something painful. He sat at the dining table while I placed food in front of him. He didn't look up. He didn't smile. He didn't notice the tiredness in my eyes. He just ate while scrolling through his phone, as if the world inside that small screen meant more than the person standing right next to him. I sat across from him quietly. For a moment I wanted to speak. I wanted to say, "Do you remember me? Do you ever think about us? Do you know how much I gave up for you?" But I didn't say anything. I was afraid of the answers. Or maybe I already knew them. After breakfast, he finished eating and simply stood up. He didn't say, "Thank you."
He didn't say goodbye.
He didn't even look at me. He just grabbed his bag and walked toward the door. My heart followed him silently. Before he could leave, something inside me whispered, "This is it. If you stay silent today, you may never speak again." So for the first time in a long time, I called out to him, "Can I talk to you for a moment?" He turned back, surprised, not worried, just irritated, like I was interrupting something important.
"Can it wait?" he said.
"I am already late." I looked at him. The man I once loved with my whole being. The man for whom I had reshaped my entire life. And softly, gently, without any anger, I said, "It has waited for years." He sighed. He came back inside. He sat down again. Not out of concern, but because he felt he had to. That hurt, more than if he had shouted. There was a long silence between us. I looked at him for a while, not as his wife, but as a woman who once believed she mattered. I spoke slowly because my heart was careful. "Do you remember the person I used to be before we got married?" He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do you remember me?" I whispered. "Not the woman who cooks, not the woman who cleans, not the woman who takes care of everything. Do you remember me, the girl who had dreams, hopes, a life of her own?" He looked uncomfortable. He gave a short laugh. "Why are you talking like this? You are overthinking again." Overthinking. How easily people use that word to dismiss someone's pain. I smiled sadly. "Do you remember how I wanted to continue my job? Do you remember how I wanted to help my parents as well? Do you remember how I wanted to build something of my own, anything?" He shrugged. "You chose to stay home. I never forced you." Those words, they hit me like a storm.
"Issues?"
I asked softly. Did I really choose, or did I sacrifice because I believed we were a team? He stayed silent. So, I continued. "Do you remember how many times I stayed up with you late at night, supported you when you were stressed, encouraged you when you felt like giving up? Do you remember how many family events I handled alone so you could focus on work? Do you remember how many times I put myself second so you could be first? He didn't respond. His silence said everything. I looked at him carefully, and that was the moment I truly saw it. He didn't remember, not because he forgot incidents, but because they never meant as much to him as they meant to me. In his world, they were normal, expected, nothing special, just a wife doing what she was supposed to do. A slow ache spread through my chest. Not sharp, not dramatic, just quiet, steady, heartbreaking. I took a breath. Do you know what hurts the most?
I said, softly.
It is not that you forgot what I did. It is that somewhere along the way you forgot who I am. He finally spoke. Are you unhappy? He asked like it was a strange thing. My eyes softened. I am not unhappy, I replied. I am invisible. He looked surprised,
Confused.
almost offended. Invisible? You live comfortably. You have everything. I provide for you. What more do you want? What more do you want? The most painful sentence a husband can say to a wife who has given everything. I did not cry. No tears came. Because this was not sudden pain. It was old pain. Finally speaking. I never wanted luxury, I said quietly. I wanted love. I wanted to feel valued. I wanted to feel seen. I wanted you to remember that I am not just part of the furniture in your life. For a moment, I hoped he would understand, and I hoped he would soften. I hoped something in his eyes would change. But he simply checked his watch and said, I do not have time for this emotional drama. We can talk later. There it was, the final truth. All my sacrifices, all my silent tears, all my unspoken hurts were nothing more than emotional drama to him. He stood up again. He walked to the door. He paused for just a second, perhaps out of habit, not love. Then he left. The door closed, and with that simple sound, something inside me broke quietly, not like glass, shattering loudly, more like paper, tearing slowly. I stood there in the silence. The house felt bigger than usual. The walls felt colder. The air felt heavier. I walked back to the kitchen. I looked around slowly. These walls had seen my laughter once. They had heard my silent cries. They had watched me give my whole life to someone who could not even see it. I placed my hands on the counter and just stood there.
No tears. No screaming.
Just a deep, gentle ache, like standing in the rain without an umbrella. It was in that moment that I finally understood something important. Love does not always end with a fight. Sometimes, it ends with realization. Realizing the person you loved stopped valuing your heart long ago. Realizing your sacrifices became normal to them, expected, unnoticed. Realizing you disappeared while standing right beside them. That was the turning point. Not a loud scene, not a dramatic breakup. Just a quiet moment when my heart whispered, you cannot live like this anymore. And once that truth enters your heart, you cannot unhear it. Life
Was about to change.
not because he pushed me away, but because I was finally learning
To step back.
After that morning, something inside me changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. There was no fight, no big decision, no final declaration. Just a quiet shift in my heart. For years, I had held everything together with hope. Hope that he would notice. Hope that he would remember. Hope that one day he would see me again. But that day, hope finally got tired. I didn't suddenly stop loving him. Love doesn't disappear like that. It was still there, just quieter, more careful, more distant. Something inside me whispered, stop begging to be seen. Start seeing yourself. So I did slowly,
Gently.
without anger. That evening when he came home, nothing looked different. The house was still clean. Dinner was still ready. Silence still lived in the corners of the room. But I was different. For the first time, I did not rush to him. I did not wait by the door. I did not search his face to see if he was in a good mood. I simply continued what I was doing. Quietly, peacefully.
He noticed.
Maybe not as
Concern.
but as curiosity. You didn't wait for me today? He asked lightly. I smiled gently. I waited for myself today, I said softly. He didn't understand. He brushed it off. Life continued. But the balance of our home had quietly shifted. In the following days, I stopped stretching myself to fit into his world. I stopped arranging my time around his mood. I stopped chasing his attention like it was oxygen. I began doing small things for myself. I started reading again. Books I once loved. Stories I once escaped into. I began taking walks alone in the evening. The fresh air felt like freedom. The sky felt bigger. I felt alive again. I talked more to myself, and less to someone who wasn't listening. I started calling my parents more often. I laughed a little more with them. They noticed something different in my voice. Are you okay? They asked. Yes, I said softly. For the first time, the answer was honest. Because I was not happy yet, but I was no longer drowning either. I was learning to breathe again. My husband noticed this change. At first, he ignored it. But slowly, silence began to unsettle him. One evening, he came home and found me sitting quietly near the window with a cup of tea. Soft evening light filled the room. The house was peaceful, calm, almost too calm. He looked at me for a moment and said, You seem different lately. I looked up gently. I am, I replied. He frowned slightly.
How?
There was no anger in his voice, just confusion. A little discomfort, a small crack in his certainty. I took a slow breath. I stopped waiting, I said simply. He didn't understand. Waiting for what? I smiled sadly. Waiting for you to remember who I am. He didn't speak immediately. For the first time in a long while, he really looked at me, not as someone who cooked for him, not as someone who served his life. He looked at me as someone he had once fallen in love with, someone who once meant the world to him. And maybe, for a small second, he remembered. Days passed, and slowly reality began to touch him. He began noticing the things he'd always taken for granted. The quiet warmth of home, the comfort of having someone care without asking, the gentle presence that holds life together silently. He saw my tiredness. He saw my silence.
He saw my distance.
One night he came home late, not physically tired, emotionally tired. He walked inside and didn't find me in the kitchen. I wasn't waiting with food in my hands. I wasn't standing there with a hopeful smile. I was sitting at the dining table eating alone.
He paused.
You already ate? He asked, surprised. I nodded calmly. Yes. He looked confused. You never eat without me. I looked at my plate, then back at him. I used to, I said softly, when I still believed we were together, even when we were apart. He had no reply. That silence spoke louder than anything else ever had. Slowly, guilt began to grow in him. Not the guilt of someone who had done something terribly wrong, but the guilt of someone who finally realized how careless they'd been with a fragile heart. He began coming home earlier. He began helping a little. He began asking questions. How was your day? Are you okay? Do you need anything? But here is the painful truth of life. Once a heart learns to live without something, it does not crave it the same way again. I didn't push him away. I didn't punish him. I didn't seek revenge. I simply did not depend on him anymore. The love was still there, but the need was gone. And that is what frightened him the most. One evening, the moment finally came. We were sitting in the living room. The house was quiet. Only the faint sound of the clock filled the room. He looked at me for a long moment, then finally spoke, not with pride, not with irritation, but with something I had not heard in his voice for years. Honesty. I think I hurt you, he said slowly. His voice was soft, almost fragile. One conversation. But something shifted. He tried slowly, awkwardly, genuinely. He started appreciating small things. He started saying thank you. He started asking how I was. He started listening, really listening. Sometimes, he would sit beside me quietly and say, I am still learning. Please do not give up on me yet. And I would smile gently. I am not giving up, I would say. I am just not disappearing anymore. There is a quiet strength in that sentence. Not leaving.
Not breaking.
Just not losing yourself. There was no dramatic ending. No big tearful reunion. No movie-style transformation. Just two people, sitting with years of silence between them,
Trying to find each other again.
and slowly,
We did.
not the way we once did. Not with wild love and youthful dreams, but with maturity, with truth, with deeper respect. He learned to look at me not as comfort, but as a human heart. I learned to live not only as a wife, but as myself. We didn't erase the past. We didn't pretend nothing happened. We simply accepted and began again, not as the same people, but as people who finally understood love is not just providing. Love is remembering. Remembering sacrifices. Remembering efforts. Remembering hearts. Remembering each other. There is an evening sometime months later when Maya and her grandmother sit on that same porch where everything once felt confusing, painful, and overwhelming. But tonight feels different. The breeze isn't cold like it once was. It carries comfort instead of fear. One conversation. But something shifted. He tried slowly, awkwardly, genuinely. He started appreciating small things. He started saying thank you. He started asking how I was. He started listening, really listening. Sometimes, he would sit beside me quietly and say, I am still learning. Please do not give up on me yet. And I would smile gently. I am not giving up, I would say. I am just not disappearing anymore. There is a quiet strength in that sentence. Not leaving.
Not breaking.
Just not losing yourself. There was no dramatic ending. No big tearful reunion. No movie-style transformation. Just two people, sitting with years of silence between them,
Trying to find each other again.
and slowly,
We did.
not the way we once did. Not with wild love and youthful dreams, but with maturity, with truth, with deeper respect. He learned to look at me not as comfort, but as a human heart. I learned to live not only as a wife, but as myself. We didn't erase the past. We didn't pretend nothing happened. We simply accepted and began again, not as the same people, but as people who finally understood love is not just providing. Love is remembering. Remembering sacrifices. Remembering efforts. Remembering hearts. Remembering each other. There is an evening sometime months later when Maya and her grandmother sit on that same porch where everything once felt confusing, painful, and overwhelming. But tonight feels different. The breeze isn't cold like it once was. It carries comfort instead of fear. The silence between them isn't heavy anymore. It feels peaceful, like two souls resting after surviving a storm. Maya looks at her grandmother with eyes that have seen hurt, betrayal, loneliness, but also strength she never believed she had. Eyes that finally understand the weight of being human. Grandmother smiles softly, as she always does, the smile that never forces anything, the smile that doesn't pretend, the smile that has always waited for Maya to be ready. And, in that quiet moment, Maya finally speaks. Not with anger, not with shaking hands, not with tears burning at the edge of her eyes. Just honesty. Soft, brave, and real. Grandma, she whispers, I think I'm finally learning what you meant. Her voice cracks a little, not from sadness, but from relief. Grandmother turns slowly, her old eyes filled with warmth, like she has been waiting to hear those words, not because she needed validation, but because she wanted Maya to experience peace. What did you learn, my child? She asks gently. Maya takes a breath. A lot of people will love you loudly, but only when it's easy for them. They will promise to stay, but only until it becomes uncomfortable. They will talk about loyalty, while leaving you the moment life asks them for effort. And for years, I blamed myself for their leaving. I thought I wasn't enough. I thought if I was more exciting, more perfect, less emotional, maybe they would have stayed. Her voice trembles softly. But I finally understand now. They didn't leave because I wasn't worthy. They left because they were not capable. There is silence after that. Not painful silence. Just truth settling peacefully. Grandmother's lips curve into a slow smile, proud, gentle, knowing. My dear, she replies quietly. People like that do not fail you. They fail themselves. Maya nods. And then, she says something she once never believed she would ever say. I'm grateful they left. Not because she wanted the pain. Not because betrayal ever stopped stinging. But because the leaving made space. Space for peace. Space for self-respect. Space for people who don't come only when they need warmth, but stay because they are warmth. People who don't just love you on your best days, but stay close on your worst ones. People who don't ask you to shrink, but help you grow. Maya looks out into the evening sky, the sun dipping down slowly, painting the world in golden orange. The same way life paints us with scars that somehow turn into wisdom. And very softly she says, I'm finally okay with losing people, if losing them means I don't lose myself anymore. Grandmother reaches over, takes Maya's hand in hers, wrinkled, warm, full of years of living. My sweet child, she whispers, life will not always give you the people you want, but it will always give you the people you need. Some people come to love you. Some come to teach you. Some come to break you, so that you can finally rebuild yourself stronger. And some people come as blessings, others come as lessons. Maya closes her eyes, and for the first time, in a very long time, her heart feels quiet, not empty, not confused, just at peace. She isn't afraid of losing people anymore, because now she understands the right ones never need to be chased. The right ones don't make love feel like a battlefield. The right ones don't leave when storms hit. They build shelter with you. They choose you, not out of convenience, but out of commitment. And slowly, Maya smiles, not the kind she wears for the world, but the kind that rises from the soul, because she finally knows she didn't lose anything. She found herself. And this is the gentle moral of her story. Sometimes life takes people away from you, so it can return you to yourself. Not everyone who walks into your life is meant to stay. Some are only meant to open your eyes, teach you strength, show you what love should not feel like. So when the wrong ones leave, do not chase. Do not
break. Do not beg. Breathe. Heal. Grow.
Because one day, you will sit peacefully, just like Maya, and you'll finally whisper to yourself, I did not lose them. I simply outgrew what I once accepted. And that day, you'll realize you never needed them to stay. You only needed to learn how to stay with yourself.